All right, welcome to another deep dive. You guys know how much I love to dig into the weird and creepy side of things.
Mm.
And tonight we're heading straight into the heart of New York City. But not the bright lights in Times Square kind of thing. We're
Wow.
going underground.
Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah, into the tunnels and the shadows of the subway system.
Oh, the subway at night. That's always a good recipe for a spooky story.
Exactly. So I found this awesome YouTube channel. It's called Mr. Nightmare. And they've got this video titled 3 Scary True Subway Stories. I'm thinking we unpack those stories, see what makes them tick, and maybe even, figure out why we're so drawn to these creepy tales in the first place.
I'm in. The subway can be a pretty unsettling place, even in broad daylight. I can't imagine what kinds of stories come out of the late night rides.
Right, okay. So the first story in this video, it's about this MTA station manager. He's a seasoned guy, been working the night shift forever.
Yeah.
But this one night, he's riding the train at like 3 a.m. It's pretty much empty,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can picture it.
And then this strange guy boards the same car. Not really threatening at first, just kind of, off.
I bet just that setup alone is enough to make anyone nervous. The isolation of the late night subway, the unexpected appearance of this mysterious figure.
Exactly. It's like that feeling you get when you know you're being watched.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what starts happening to the station manager. This guy, he sits far away from him, but he keeps glancing at him, like sizing him up. Have you ever had that happen to you on like a late night train ride?
Oh, absolutely. It's like your senses go into overdrive, you know? Your heart starts racing and your mind just starts filling in all these blanks about who this person is and what they might want.
Yeah, and this story just gets creepier from there. So the station manager gets off at his stop, right? And guess who follows him?
Oh no, the strange guy, right.
Yep. And it gets worse. The guy actually tries to get into the station manager's locked office. He even starts knocking on the door saying he wants to talk.
Talk about a violation of personal space. It's like that moment when a general sense of unease turns into a more specific threat, and that's when the real fear kicks in, right?
Totally. So the station manager, he's no fool. He checks the security cameras, and there he is, the guy, caught on camera, lurking outside his office.
Oh, wow. Even in what should be a safe space, he's being watched. The story really highlights how quickly that feeling of security can vanish, especially in a place like the subway.
It's super unsettling, right? And that security camera footage makes it all feel so real. Makes you wonder if this was just a harmlessly weird guy or someone with, darker intentions.
It's like the storyteller is leaving that question hanging in the air, letting our imaginations run wild. And honestly, that's what makes these stories so effective.
Totally agree. And guess what? It doesn't end there. The station manager, he tries to shake this guy off, decides to head to a nearby Wendy's. Right, he's thinking, I'll grab a bite, wait it out. But even there, even at Wendy's, he sees the guy staring at him through the window.
Oh, come on. It's like a scene straight out of a horror movie, that feeling of being hunted, you know? No matter where you go, you can't escape.
Totally. And that's the thing about these stories. They tap into those primal fears we all have. But hold on, because it gets even creepier. So the station manager finally finishes his shift, reaches his last stop, and he's feeling a little bit relieved,
Yeah, you think he'd be safe by then.
Right. He's about to head out, but then decides to check the security cameras one last time.
What does he see?
The guy. There he is again, pacing outside the office, just staring directly at the camera. And then, poof, vanishes.
It's chilling. Absolutely chilling. It's like even after all that, he can't escape that feeling of being watched. It really makes you think about the nature of these encounters, you know? Was this just a random creepy guy? Or was something more sinister at play? It's funny, you know how we think of the subway as this symbol of connection and movement in the city, but
Yeah.
but at night it becomes almost like the opposite, you know?
Absolutely.
It becomes a place of isolation and even fear.
It's like a completely different world down there. When the crowds thin out and those fluorescent lights start to feel even more, ominous.
Yeah, and that's where our next story picks up. It's about a group of friends. They're out in the city having a good time.
Classic New York night out.
Exactly. And they decide to hop on the late train to head home,
Tired, maybe a little tipsy, totally unsuspecting.
setting the stage for a classic horror story setup.
Right, so they're riding the train, everything seems normal enough, But then they start hearing this commotion coming from the next car.
Oh no.
Yeah, so they, being curious, they peek in to see what's going on, and what they see is terrifying. 2 hooded figures waving around handguns and threatening a woman.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that sudden shift from carefree fun to a life or death situation?
Total nightmare fuel. And these
Mhm.
friends, they're not the type to just stand there and watch,
Yeah.
They want to help. But as they get closer, they realize these guys are the real deal. They're armed, they're dangerous, and they're not messing around.
So what do?
Instinct kicks in. They make a run for it, fleeing through multiple train cars with these armed guys right on their heels.
Oh, that's terrifying. Like a chase scene from an action movie?
It's like every fear you ever had about being trapped on a train with nowhere to escape.
Mm.
But they finally manage to find a hiding spot. And as they're huddled there, catching their breath, they overhear the most chilling phrase, "If you find them, kill them."
Oh, God. That just sends chills down my spine.
Right. Talk about escalating the stakes. It's not just a threat anymore, it's a death sentence.
And the way you described it, they're just hiding there listening to these guys talk about hunting them down. I can't even imagine the terror they must have felt.
It's like that feeling of being completely helpless, like your fate is totally out of your control. But here's the thing. Just when you think the story is going in one direction, it takes a hard left turn. Later on, they see the woman who was supposedly being threatened interacting with the armed guys like they're all buddies. She even calls out to them asking if they got them.
Wait a minute, what? So was it all a setup?
That's the million-dollar question. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the story. Was it a prank? Some kind of twisted game? Or was the woman somehow involved in the whole thing from the beginning? It's mind-blowing.
Talk about a plot twist. It's like the storyteller is reminding us that you never really know what's going on beneath the surface, especially in a city like New York. It's crazy, right?
Right.
Like you think you're safe in a crowd, but then a story like that
I know.
just throws everything into question.
It really makes you realize that even in a city with millions of people, you can still feel so vulnerable, so isolated, especially in a place like the subway.
Yeah, those tunnels, those platforms late at night, it's like they have their own kind of energy.
Totally. And speaking of unsettling subway vibes, remember Danny from the last episode? The guy who saw that, well, let's just say the head in the tunnel.
Oh yeah, Danny's story. Definitely one of the creepiest ones we've covered.
For sure. Oh, he's back with another story. And this one really dives into how a scary experience can totally change your whole perception of a place.
Oh, I bet. Once you've seen something like that in the subway, it's hard to shake that feeling of unease, right?
Exactly. So after that night with the head, Danny started avoiding that particular station altogether.
Makes sense.
Like he'd rather walk an extra mile to a different stop, even if it meant adding like 20 minutes to his commute.
I think we all have those places, right? The ones that trigger a little anxiety, maybe because of something we experienced or even just a story we heard.
Yeah, it's like our brains create these mental maps marking certain spots as danger zones. And for Danny, that one encounter turned the subway, a place he used to navigate without a second thought, into a source of constant anxiety.
It's like his whole world shifted a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. He became hyper aware of his surroundings, always looking over his shoulder, jumping at every shadow.
Trauma can do that to you. It can make you more alert, more sensitive to potential threats.
It's a survival mechanism, right?
Yeah. But it can also be exhausting living in that constant state of vigilance.
For sure. And, that's what I find so fascinating and so unsettling about these subway stories. They remind us that even in a city that never sleeps, even in a place that's supposed to be about connection and movement, there are still these pockets of darkness, these moments where we can feel utterly alone and vulnerable.
And you know what? They also serve as a reminder to trust our instincts, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To be aware of our surroundings and take precautions, especially when we're traveling alone at night.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about finding that balance between staying safe and not letting fear control our lives. So to all our listeners out there, next time you're on the subway late at night, maybe just be a little more mindful of your surroundings, okay? Keep your phone charged, maybe skip that last car, and try not to stare too long into those dark tunnels.
You never know what might be staring back.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the creepy underbelly of the New York City subway. We'll be back next time with more stories and more deep dives into the things that make us wonder and maybe keep us up at night. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and keep exploring.